Yes, there we go, okay? What's your picture? What's your name again?
Temingos.
We can see. Where's your picture? We'll change according to what they show.
Sure.
What room would you like now? The room.
Africa.
During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. These were the words of Madiba. As we celebrate the centenary of both Madiba and Masisulu this year, we take a pause 20 years on as a democracy and urge all South Africans, young and old, to take the baton of freedom, patriotism, and unity forward for another century, making your future work better, learning from Madiba and Masisulu.
A warm welcome, and you are watching Parliament TV, and you had been watching the joint meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry, as well as the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, which had been deliberating on the matter of the stain of saga. We will now be bringing you live the unveiling of inscriptions of the key pillars of the Constitution. Of course, we do know that in 2018, Parliament, alongside government, the citizens, and the whole world celebrated the centenary birthdays of both Madiba and Masisulu, which had been underscored by the theme, Making Your Future Work Better, Learning from Madiba and Masisulu. Amongst the multi-pronged commemorative activities determined by Parliament was the installation of inscriptions of the key pillars of the Constitution, which Madiba and Masisulu fought for its realization. You would see now on the screen that the event will be taking place at the Queen's Hall, which is situated in the National Council of Provinces. It will be opened with the national anthem, which will be sung by the parliamentary choir. We have quite a few dignitaries that have honored the invitation by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Malagambete, as well as the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Tandimo Dise. Of course, this event is supported by all political parties represented at Parliament, as you would see some of the political party leaders on your screen. The Mandela family and the Sisulu family have been invited for the event, and we have Ms. Ndileka Mandela and Chief Mandla Mandela, who will be representing the Mandela family, as well as Mr. Max Sisulu, his wife and son, that will be representing the Sisulu family. There's lots of activities that will be coming through from this event. As we commemorate, as we unveil these inscriptions of the key pillars of the Constitution. Of course, as you can see there, we do have the House Chairperson of the National Assembly, Ms. Togo Didiza, and we have a number of people that are coming to celebrate this event with Parliament. And we can see there we have one of the House Chairpersons, Ms. Boroto. And yes, the choir is ready. On the program for today, as I've indicated earlier on, you will have your parliamentary choir, which will then open up with the national anthem, and will now be linking to the choir. And you can see the president arriving, which is an indication that our formal program will be starting soon. And that will start with the national anthem, which will be sung by the parliamentary choir, And following that, we'll have the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Lichisa Tsinoli, who's also our Program Director for the event, welcoming and outlining the purpose of this event. And you can see that the President Cyril Ramaphosa giving a hug to the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Thandi Modise, as well as the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Baleka Mbete. And as they are walking in, just to quickly outline the program for you, as I said, Mr. Tsinoli will be doing the welcoming, and that will be followed by a brief overview of the Fifth Parliament. We know that this is one parliament that has had too many challenges with the introduction of new political parties in the assembly. So we'll have the Speaker of the Assembly just giving us an overview. That will then be followed by the significance of the inscriptions, and that will be delivered by the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. And of course, we have President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will then present the keynote address for the event, and guests will then be invited to the steps of the National Council of Provinces, where we will witness the unveiling of the inscriptions, which will then Advocate Pindela, who is the Secretary to the National Council of Provinces, will read the plaque before the President is invited to unveil the inscriptions, which are located in the steps of the National Council of Provinces. And from there, we will then move to the National Assembly, where Mr. Kaso, who is the Secretary to the National Assembly, will be reading the plaque, and the President unveiling the inscriptions. We are almost ready to start with our formal program. As you can see, leaders of various political parties, the former Speaker of the National Assembly. We haven't seen much of him in a long time, but there we bring him to you live on Parliament TV, Mr. Max Sisulu, getting a hug, former Speaker and the current Speaker, just giving each other a hug. And right next to the Speaker is Mama Sisulu, the wife of Mr. Max Sisulu, also getting a hug from the President. Yes, and as we are proceeding there, the President with his greetings, and we will be starting in a few minutes' time. We also have Mr. Dennis Goldberg, as you can see there, greeted by the President, who is also one of the dignitaries invited to this event. And we are getting ready. We will now be crossing over to the event.
Shall we remain dancing a little bit? But we are about to sing the national anthem.
Over to the choir that will then be singing the national anthem. They look joyous, happy, smiles, as you would see them ready to take on. The event will now be crossing over to the choir for the national anthem.
Thank you very much. Let us proceed and request the choir to lead us in singing the national anthem. Please, we are not outsourcing our singing to the choir. We are merely asking them to lead us in singing the national anthem. Let's do that, please. Choir. Thank you. You may be seated, President, and our special guests, please be seated. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, we are glad, sir, you have been able to accept the invitation of Parliament as head of state. When you are in the House as head of government is another story. Today, we are glad you have made your availability as head of state here. Madam Speaker and Madam Chairperson, I'm glad to say welcome to you to Parliament and to this event. And leaders and chief whips of political parties, I'm also glad to be speaking to you. I hardly ever speak in the House. So I'm glad to be saying welcome. And of course, the Sisulu family and the Mandela family, welcome. Comrade Bramex, Honorable Max, welcome. I'm describing merely my relationship with him. There are many. Welcome and to Madam Eleanor Sisulu. We are glad you are able to make it. And of course, Istwala Andwe, Dennis Goldbeck, and your partner. We are absolutely delighted to have you here in the presence of a very important event for which you spent your long life in. Thank you for being with us here today. We, on behalf of the presiding officers of Parliament, wish to welcome all of you for the unveiling of these inscriptions depicting the values of the Constitution. Just to say a few words that these constitutional inscriptions brings to an end our year-long commemorative activities of the 100 years of Madiba and Masisulu's anniversary. And so we are glad, Mr. President, Speaker, Chairperson, and honored guests, it is indeed the significance of this unveiling ceremony that we also do it during the 25 years of our democracy. It gives us an opportunity to reflect on this, and the leadership will do the honors. Of course, we have to point out that it happens ahead of the 21st March. Now, having said that, which is Human Rights Day in South Africa, it means this event joins internationally very significant events in the global calendar. The International Women's Day, which occurred on the 8th of March, and of course, Comrade President, it is so that on the 14th of March, the greatest thinker of the 19th century was born in 1883, Karl Marx. So the event joins a calendar of events that are of global significance. It is no small matter. So this is why we've requested you to speak to us. Madam Speaker, we invite you, ma'am, to talk to us briefly, and you will be followed by the chairperson herself to welcome and open this event for us so that we can clear the space for the president later. Thank you.
Program Director, Your Excellency, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mayor Thandi Modise, my honorable members, colleagues, presiding officers all ministers and presiding officers here present, valued stakeholders from across the board, including media representatives, ladies and gentlemen, we are concluding the 5th Parliament's business this month, and we will have national and provincial elections on the 8th of March, as President has already announced, after which we will be back here establishing the 6th Democratic Parliament, whereupon we will elect our brand new president yet again. I'm sure I speak for many when I say we have a great cause for celebrating the Silver Jubilee anniversary as Parliament. We witnessed its birth on the 9th of May, 1994, when Masisulu gracefully stood up to nominate Madiba for election as the first president of a free and democratic South Africa. That marked a massive nation-building project in which Parliament played a leading role of bringing South Africans together through their public representatives to build a new country. The journey traversed so far with its groundbreaking milestones, disappointing lows, because we must acknowledge them, the lows, and vigorous revivals helped build this institution. Parliament continues to affirm democratic values espoused by Madiba and Masisulu and other leaders in just 25 years. Parliament presided over defining decisions which include managing a smooth transition from President Nelson Mandela, President Thabo Mbeki, to President Kgalema Motlanthe, to President Jacob Zuma, and now to our current President Ramaphosa. Passing about 2,000 bills as part of building a new nation from the ashes of apartheid and colonialism that had ravaged our society and built divisions with which we are still grappling in our nation-building project. Approving budgets involving trillions of rands, which changed the lives of millions of South Africans and shifted human development outcomes. These included increased life expectancy, vastly improved access to education, with 8 in 10 children enrolled and registering high matric pass rates, tripling enrollments at tertiary institutions with billions given in bursaries, a 6-fold increase in uptake of social security benefits. Millions have benefited from housing, access to electricity, literacy programs, water, and many other amenities. I must also hasten to say there are many other areas where the execution of many world-acclaimed policies and programs did not result in the desired national outcomes and impact. As this bold and ambitious Parliament, we, with the Speakers Forum, actually assigned an independent high-level panel led by one of our former heads of states to conduct a clinical assessment of the impact of our laws, of where it matters most, the people. Without fear, favor, or prejudice, this panel reflected on areas that require immediate and urgent interventions by Parliament. These include inequality, land hunger, unemployment, poverty, participation in mainstream economic activities, and social cohesion. The 5th Parliament has included these in the legacy report so that the sixth Parliament can hit the ground running. Parliament's laws were reflected on. A lot of introspection was engaged in. Parliamentary inquiries into incidents of state capture, corruption, and serious maladministration were exposed. Parliament held public processes towards appointments to state institutions such as the NYDA, the Public Protector, and the SABC Board, to mention just a few. We trust that the remodeling undertaken in these projects will help Parliament turn the tide in respect of public trust of Parliament, which had taken a knock at some point earlier. Parliament took delivery on its functions to new heights, serving as a true platform for national dialogue on key issues, passing legislation and that makes a difference in people's lives, sharpening oversight, including stakeholder engagements in government program evaluation, and playing a key role in Section 100 interventions in terms of the Constitution. Heightened participation of people in parliamentary activities, including taking Parliament to the people, stakeholder engagements with periodic briefings made. Parliament shifted the paradigm in many respects in the international sphere, with many MPs serving as leaders at the SADC Parliamentary Forum, the Pan-African Parliament, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the BRICS Parliamentary Forum, and interparliamentary union levels. One of the top highlights was the IPU dedicating a slot for celebrating Madiba last year in Geneva, where we intensified the campaign to promote the values that will be unveiled today by the President. Institutional capacity of both Parliament and the 9 provincial legislatures grew in leaps and bounds, with hundreds of members graduating, the staff complement increasing fourfold, and successive years of clean audits achieved by Parliament and many legislatures. On behalf of current and past leaders of Parliament, I wish to extend our gratitude to all who made all these possible. First, our parliamentary staff have been a key pillar in our 5-legged strategy, especially during the 5th term, together with their families and their unions. Political parties in Parliament, stakeholders who share our vision of a South Africa where the best ideals outlined in our Constitution are made real for even the most vulnerable in our society. The media, especially our resident members of the Press Gallery Association, without whom the achievements made in improving awareness, understanding of our mandate, performance rating, and public awareness of opportunities for meaningful participation in parliamentary activities would not have been possible. Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, my colleagues, presiding officers, honorable members, our honored guests, valued stakeholders, and everyone gathered here today, that has been the story of our Parliament. The 5th Parliament Legacy Report will be shared with all of you. And indeed, as the President says, watch this space regarding the 25th anniversary celebrations planned for this year. I thank you.
I understand it must be in quick succession. Mr. President, Speaker of the National Assembly, honorable members, I think that we should actually welcome the two families. Welcome to the Sisulus led by Bootmax. Welcome the Mandelas represented by Undileka Mandela. And say to Comrade Dennis, very nice to see you, cheeky as usual. Honorable members, our unveiling today of these inscriptions of our Constitution's principles pay tribute to two significant events. One is the births in 1918 of two exemplary South Africans who courageously fought and sacrificed family life for the democracy we now enjoy. Today, we again pay homage to their immense contribution in establishing our democracy, which we must safeguard. I speak of Mr. Nelson Mandela, the first president of our democracy. I speak of Mrs. Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, that self-effacing champion of freedom and member of our first democratic parliament who nominated Madiba for presidency. The world joined us in celebrating their centenary birthdays. The inscriptions will also commemorate the 25th anniversary of our first democratic elections on the 27th of February. This year, we will be looking back at a quarter of a century of our democracy. It's a democracy which is based on the values of human dignity, achievement of equality, and the achievement of human rights and freedoms, non-racialism and non-sexism, the supremacy of our Constitution and the rule of law, universal adult suffrage, a national common voters' roll, regular elections, and a multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness. The sixth parliament, to be established after our general elections in May, and the subsequent democratic parliaments must continue to strengthen the meaningful links between our people and their public representatives. So too is enhancing our people's inputs in our lawmaking and other processes and effectively communicating the purpose and relevance of the laws we pass, so that we advance to and realize the society envisaged in our Constitution. Mr. President, these inscriptions and their explanatory plaque will help to spark interest on how we overcame the challenges of our past. As Madiba reminded us in his farewell speech to the first democratic parliament, he said, and I quote, "Those were to avoid the nightmare of debilitating racial war and bloodshed, and to reconcile our people on the basis that our overriding objective must be together to overcome the legacy of poverty, of division, and inequity." Besides these inscriptions, there are other reminders of our democracy in the parliamentary precinct. There is the Madiba bust in front of the National Assembly building, which you and the visitors know very well. The Parliament's presiding officers, at that time, the National Assembly Speaker, Mr. Max Sisulu, the Deputy Speaker, Ms. Nomaindia Mfegeto, the National Council of Provinces Chairperson, Mr. Mninyawa Mahlangu, the Deputy Chairperson, Ms. Tandime Mela, and about 1,000 members and guests were there to unveil. As we said at the time, we hoped the bust would provide a place to gather for visitors to Parliament, to reflect on what each of us must do in fulfillment of the democracy for which so many have sacrificed and for which we all still yearn. The unveiling of the plaque marked the 20th year of our democracy. And indeed, it has become a place for reflection, selfies and photographing, filming, and social media posting of the People's Parliament. There is a site of memory, which many of you may not have noticed, though. It is positioned to the side of the steps leading up to that splendid main door of the National Assembly building. It is a modest plaque resting on a simple hip plinth. It celebrates the 10 years of our democracy. Parliament's presiding officers at that time unveiled it on the 10th of May 2004 in the presence of the former President Thabo Mbeki. In bronzed lettering, the plaque reads, on the 27th of April 1994, the people of South Africa voted in their first ever democratic elections. On the 9th of May 1994, Mr. Nelson Mandela was elected as the first president of a democratic South Africa. Now, inside Parliament's building, also, we have artifacts which keep the story of our democracy. In the old assembly chamber, there's the Keiskamma tapestry that tells the story of the African in beadwork, in skins, in embroidery, from the perspective of ordinary people. It is 112 meters long and 70 meters high. And it was the women from Keiskamma Art Project, a community initiative and a non-profit organization in Hamburg on the banks of the Keiskamma River in the Ngoshwa region of the Eastern Cape who made that artwork. It is a powerful symbol for our People's Parliament, demonstrating our support for empowerment of women and the support of the local initiative. Speaker Baleka Mbete unveiled that tapestry in 2006 on International Women's Day. Our parliamentary emblem is also a reminder about who we are as a democracy and where we come from. The parliamentary emblem is a drum topped by the rising sun, encased with protea leaves, all resting on an open book. The sun represents our past, the healing of our past, and the improved quality of life for all South Africans. The leaves represent the freely elected representatives of the people. The drum calls the people's representatives, and generally the people of South Africa, together. And the book represents our new constitution. The new emblem is meant to make people think differently about Parliament, that ours is a Parliament that the masses of our people can truly experience as their voice. Chairperson, maybe these symbols and artifacts of our democracy are unnecessary. Let us look at the bottom line. Some may say how many schools, houses, better health care facilities, and other basic services could the money not have been rather used for? But like births, marriages, and death that we mark as rich and poor citizens, as a nation, we shall not live by bread alone. We shall also live by the word. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Please do us the honors. I don't discriminate, Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Program Director, Mr. Lechisa Tsenodi. Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Baleka Mbete. The Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Me Thandi Modise. Members of the Mandela and the Sisulu family, we're very pleased that you've found time to join us. Isitala Andre, Dennis Goldberg, ministers and deputy ministers, honorable members of parliament, leaders of the political parties represented in our parliament, members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. I am deeply honored to have this opportunity to participate in the unveiling of the inscriptions at the steps of the People's Parliament, both here and at the NCOP and outside the National Assembly. The citizens of our country and their representatives will pass through these doors and will be reminded as they pass through these doors of the fundamental principles upon which our society has been founded. Each of us will need to reflect on whether our daily actions, as we go about doing whatever we do on an ongoing basis, advance and or betray the cause of freedom and democracy. We will need, as we walk up and down these steps, to ask ourselves continuously a number of questions. We'll need to ask whether we are contributing to forging a society that is characterized by equality, diversity, unity, and reconciliation. We will also need to ask ourselves whether, through our daily actions, we are advancing the cause of non-racialism, non-sexism, and true democracy in our country. We'll also need to ask ourselves whether we are building institutions that promote openness and participation, that also enhance oversight and accountability. Are we pursuing a national program that advances reconstruction and the development of our country? These are the principles that many people in our country fought for, and many people also lost their lives fighting for them. The values that underwrite these inscriptions that we are going to unveil are reflected in the Freedom Charter, which was adopted in Kliptown in 1955. They are the fundamental values of our Constitution and our democracy, and these are also celebrated every day in millions of ways and in different ways through the lives of our people. These values have universal appeal as well. They are consistent with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and find resonance with the rest of progressive humanity around the world. These principles, therefore, not only bind us together as a nation and as South Africans, but they bind us to the peoples of the world. It is significant that these principles are being inscribed on the steps of Parliament as we celebrate 25 years of a free and democratic South Africa. These principles have defined the great national endeavor of the last quarter century, inspiring our people, guiding our actions, setting our destination to the future. We should use this opportunity of this anniversary to deeply reflect on whether we have given effect to these principles. It is important also that we are holding this unveiling in the week that we mark Human Rights Day. The human rights we celebrate on the 21st of March cannot have meaning without the values as well as the principles inscribed on these steps. When we talk about freedom and democracy, equality and diversity, unity and reconciliation, and openness and participation, we are making reference in the main to civil and political rights. These include the right to life, equality before the law, freedom of speech, and the right to vote, among other civil and political rights. When we talk about oversight and accountability, reconstruction and development, and cooperative governance, we are reflecting on the social and economic development of our society and the well-being of the people of this country. We are reflecting on rights such as the right to health, to education, to shelter, and to social welfare. Parliament needs to be applauded for including the inscription of these principles as part of the program of celebration of the centuries of Nelson Mandela and Mama Albertina Sisulu. There are few South Africans who have embodied the values reflected here with such consistency as well as integrity as they did. They were fearless champions of equality, understanding that South Africa would never be free until the rights, the opportunities, and the material conditions of its people would no longer be determined by the color of their skin or by their race. They understood the other ways in which inequality was manifested. As an outstanding leader of both the national liberation struggle and the women's movement, Mama Albertina Sisulu fought against the triple oppression of black women. She fought not only against national oppression, but also class exploitation and gender inequality. These inscriptions give us confidence that, like Albertina Sisulu, the women of this country will lead the struggle and overcome the social ills that patriarchy breeds, such as discrimination, the feminization of poverty, and gender-based violence. Through these inscriptions, the courage, the fortitude, and the stoicism of Mama Albertina Sisulu will live on among the women of this country, young and old, black and white. These inscriptions are not mere adornments. They are really not letters that we just need to look at and watch and look away. They are instead a constant reminder of the ideals of the democratic and more humane society we are still constructing. As representatives of the people of South Africa, we are all duty-bound to live up to these values and principles without deviation. When President Nelson Mandela opened the Democratic Parliament on the 24th of May in 1994, he laid the foundation of a new society that would be based on the values and the principles now inscribed here. Thus, to immortalize Nelson Mandela, Albertina Sisulu, and many other of their generations, we have to etch these values on our collective conscience to push the frontiers of human fulfillment and human freedom. As we approach the end of the term of the Fifth Democratic Parliament, I wish to thank all political parties represented here for having done everything within their bounds, the bounds of human ability, that is, to advance and promote these values. For the various parties, however opposed they may well be to one another, in their words and in their deeds, they did contribute to pushing forward the bounds of human ability to advance these values. Despite our different political persuasions, these values bind us together and they give us common identity as South Africans. Both Madiba and Masisulu held a deep respect for the people of South Africa, but they also held a unique deep respect for the will of the people, believing that democracy was not merely a mechanical process, but that democracy was a dynamic and vibrant engagement of people in all matters that affected their lives. In his statement to the court in November in 1962, Madiba said that the will of the people is the basis of the authority of government, is a principle universally acknowledged as a sacred principle throughout the civilized world, and it constitutes the basic foundation of freedom and justice. As we hold our 6th democratic elections, let us do everything we possibly can within our power to ensure that the will of the people does truly prevail. And beyond the elections, to ensure that the process of governance is defined by openness, by transparency, as well as, and more importantly, by accountability. I call on all of us as leaders and representatives of our people, as we embark on elections work and campaign for our different parties, to continue to observe these values, these principles, and to do as much as we possibly can to respect these values and principles. But more importantly, to do and say nothing that will cause disunity amongst all of us as South Africans. Let us all campaign responsibly and do our part to ensure a free, fair, and credible election. Let freedom reign. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's greatly appreciated. Now, we are going to move with a slightly faster pace. And we will request you at the back to start walking out. You will be ushered to where you will be, and then the tables, the benches in front of me will follow soon. Can we do that immediately, please? You will be ushered as you leave. Let's do it quicker, and then we will come over in front of the steps there. Thank you.
Welcome back. You are still watching the unveiling of inscriptions of the key pillars of the Constitution, which is hosted at the Queen's Hall in the National Council of Provinces. Of course, you've heard the Deputy Speaker indicating that President, the presiding officers, and the representatives of the Mandela and Sisulu families, as well as all the other guests, will be ushered to the entrance of the National Council of Provinces for the unveiling. We do know that Parliament consists of 2 houses, which is the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, with the NCOP constitutionally mandated to ensure that provincial interests are taken into account in the national sphere of government. And this is done through participation in the national legislative process and by providing a national forum for consideration of issues affecting provinces. You can see that discussion between the president and the presiding officers, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Balegambete, and the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Tandi Modise, as the guests are making their way out for the unveiling. Of course, it is expected that the Secretary of the National Council of Provinces, Advocate Pindela, will read out the wording on the plaque in the presence of the President, the presiding officers, as well as the representatives of the Mandela and the Sisulu families. We are getting ready for that event, and we'll also have, immediately after Advocate Pindela has read the plaque, the President would then be invited to unveil the inscriptions on the steps of the National Council of Provinces. We will now quickly go and listen to the choir whilst we're waiting for those formalities.
Order. We are going to request the Secretary of the National Council of Provinces, Eric Pindela, to read what is inscribed here. Secretary, you've got the scissors ready for the President?
In commemoration of the centennial birthday anniversaries of the founding president of a democratic South Africa, Mr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and former member of parliament, Ms. Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the Republic of South Africa, together with Ms. Tandi Ruth Modise, chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, and Ms. Balega Mbete, Speaker of the National Assembly, unveiled the constitutional pillars on the steps of the National Council of Provinces on 19 March 2019.
Thank you very much. We will now request the President to receive the pair of scissors as he cuts the ribbon in front here. ASTP, provide the President with the... Can we move? Thank you.
The President will now be cutting the ribbon for the as he unveiled the inscriptions in front, unfortunately, in the NCOP stairs. As you would see there on your screen, you have Mr. Dennis Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg is a social campaigner who was active in the struggle against apartheid and was imprisoned for 22 years, along with other key members of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And now having the president cutting that ribbon, assisted by Mr. Dennis Goldberg, and we can officially say that the president has unveiled the inscriptions in the steps of the National Assembly. You see the celebrations. I mean, we all do know the history and the struggle of our country, hence we're having such celebrations. The president was unveiling the inscriptions, the 7 inscriptions. This has been actually a very lengthy process in arriving to these inscriptions, because you know that there was a process of research and the pillars were determined taking into consideration the constitutional values and functions of the institutions. And the president
Thank you very much. Let's hear the president, guys. Thank you, choir. Thank you. Let's hear the president read.
Well, in the NCOP stairs we have 7, and you will notice that when we get to the second phase of the program, which will happen in front of the National Assembly, we'll have 6. And I will be sharing.
I will read as soon as they finish trampling the values of our Constitution. Now that the trampling of the values of our Constitution has been finished, today this is a great day for us, for our Parliament, that we unveil these inscriptions that are essentially the foundation stones of our democracy and everything that we stand for in terms of values and principles as enshrined in our Constitution. For our Constitution promotes freedom and democracy. It promotes equality and diversity of our people. Our Constitution endears us to work for unity and reconciliation amongst all South Africans. What we seek to do through our Constitution is to have openness and participation in all matters that concern our people at the state level and generally in society. And we seek to have a government that is overseen through the Constitution that we have, but also more importantly, to be an accountable government and to be accountable leaders to our people, promoting reconstruction and development, and also having cooperative governance at all levels, where the various government structures at national, provincial, and local government cooperate, but more importantly, to have cooperation amongst all the arms of the state, and in this case, the Parliament cooperating with the executive, also working together with the judiciary and all Chapter 9 institutions that are the full architecture of our constitutional democracy. So with these words, we unveil these inscriptions that stand as the foundation stones of our democracy. And would like to congratulate the leaders of Parliament, the Speaker, and the Chair of the Council of Provinces for having come up with this wonderful idea, and let us give them a round of applause for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. There's going to be a quick picture of the presiding officers and the 2 families. Let's do that. It's urgent, and then we'll walk away.
You are still watching Parliament TV. You are still watching Parliament TV, the unveiling of inscriptions of the key pillars of the Constitution. Of course, we are done with the first phase, which happened in the National Council of Provinces. But for the interest of those who might not have been able to hear what Advocate Pindela read, the plaque reads as follows. In commemoration of the centennial birthday anniversaries of the founding president of a democratic South Africa, Mr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and former Member of Parliament, Ms. Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa, together with Ms. Thandi Ruth Modise, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, and Ms. Baleka Mbete, Member of Parliament and Speaker of the National Assembly, unveiled the constitutional pillars on the steps of the National Council of Provinces on 19 March 2019. Of course, for those who are closer to Parliament, I think this will be open to them to come and see it for themselves. And of course, the President further read the 7 pillars that are in National Council of Provinces stairs, and they are freedom and democracy, equality and diversity, unity and reconciliation, openness and participation, oversight and accountability, reconstruction and development, and cooperative governance. We do know that the NCOP plays a unique role in the promotion of the principles of cooperative government and intergovernmental relations. It further ensures that the 3 spheres of government work together in performing their unique functions in terms of the Constitution, and that in doing so, they do not encroach in each other's areas of competence. This also ensures that synergy exists between the spheres on matters of concurrent competence. As you can see there, the pictures are being taken with the Deputy Speaker still leading the process, and I am certain that they are now moving towards the second part of of today's program that will be happening right at the National Assembly stairs, with the program being led by the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Riti Tau. And of course, as they are moving, we will now play a short video of Mandela and Sisulu centenaries.
From the humble beginnings of Mvezo village, Transkei in South Africa's province of the Eastern Cape, a statesman, a unifier, and a leader of note was born. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela grew to leadership ranks in his movement, the African National Congress. His activism against apartheid led to his capture in 1962 and imprisonment in 1964 at Robben Island.
It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. If it needs be, it is an idea for which I am prepared to die.
Mandela emerged a unifying magnet in a country where genocide and bloodshed was a threat any moment to peaceful and safe elections in 1994.
In the name of peace, democracy and freedom for all, I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
Mandela became a symbol of unity during his life and still continues posthumously with his ideals and his legacy. His love for his people, especially the children and the poor, will live in many of our minds and souls forever. As we celebrate the centenary of the birth of Madiba, we also commemorate 100 years of a remarkable and rooted woman, Mama Albertina Sisulu, who was arrested under the General Laws Amendments Act in 1963 and later nominated Nelson Mandela in Parliament to become South Africa's first democratic president in 1994.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela for election as president.
Will you please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God"?
So help me God.
The centenary of Madiba and Masisulu symbolizes both the struggle against apartheid and the democracy we continue to enjoy today. Their lives are a legacy our country and the world will cherish for generations. Parliament of the Republic of South Africa salutes these two liberation struggle giants. Our country will remain indebted for their sweat and that of many heroes.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, the choir. We are now starting the second part of our program, and in doing that, let me welcome the President of the Republic on this side of Parliament now, which is the other house of Parliament, Speaker and Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. Our program is very short this time, taking into account that something that has been brought to my attention, that the sittings are supposed to start. It is said now by the wave, yes. So on recognizing our children, I'm very careful of saying comrade because of the generational gap. So you'll bear with me. My father, my grandfather. Thank you very much for your efforts. Let me then afford the Secretary to the National Assembly to read the plaque for us.
In commemoration of the centennial birthday anniversaries of the founding president of a democratic South Africa, Mr. Rolihlahla Mandela, and former member of parliament, Ms. Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa, together with Ms. Baleka Mbete, Speaker of the National Assembly, and Ms. Thandi Ruth Modise, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, unveiled the constitutional pillars on the steps of the National Assembly on 19 March 2019.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tasso. We'll then proceed to the cutting. I therefore invite the President and the Acting Secretary to Parliament to give it the scissors to cut. Veteran Goldberg is there. President, you are invited to cut the ribbon.
the ribbon to unveil the inscriptions
Thank you very much.
in the National Assembly stairs. And we'll have again the President reading for you. As you'll see on your screen, Mr. Tau, who is the Program Director, the President of the Republic. Right behind the President is the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Acting Secretary to Parliament, Ms. Baby Chawa, and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Tau. We'll now listen to the President.
Once again, we reflect on the foundation stones of our democracy that make up the pillars of our Constitution: freedom and democracy, equality and diversity, unity and reconciliation, openness and participation, oversight and accountability, and lastly but not least, reconstruction and development. These are the pillars that are the foundation stones of our democracy that make up what we are as a country and as a nation, and may they be forever be observed and be forever and permanently inscribed in our hearts and our minds. And may we continue to live these values that make up what we are as a nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President. Presiding officers, President, for a photo session, and the families, you are invited to the last stair. Madam Speaker and Chair, sandwich the
Of course, for those that were unable to make up what Mr. Kaso was reading, it is the plug, which is made of bronze copper. It reads as follows. In commemoration of the centennial birthday anniversaries of the founding president of a democratic South Africa, Mr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and former member of parliament, Ms. Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the Republic of South Africa, together with Ms. Balega Mbete, Speaker of the National Assembly, and Ms. Thandi Ruth Modise, Chairperson of National Council of Provinces, unveiled the constitutional pillars on the steps of the National Assembly on 19 March 2019. And those constitutional pillars are freedom and democracy, equality and diversity, unity and reconciliation, openness and participation, oversight and accountability, reconstruction and development. That's the 6, and as I had earlier indicated that in the National Council of Provinces we have 7 of these pillars, although we only have 6 in the National Assembly. And this is merely because of the role that NCOP plays in the promotion of the principles of cooperative governance and intergovernmental relations, as it ensures that the 3 spheres of government work together in performing their unique functions in terms of the Constitution, and that in doing so, they do not encroach in each other's area of competence. We have come up to the end of our event for today, which is the unveiling of the inscriptions, of the key pillars of the Constitution. And we hope that you enjoyed this programming. We will always attempt to bring you all Parliament's events live on Parliament TV. My name is Tembingo Singoma, and I will now be crossing over to the choir.
Papa.